Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you once again to the commemoration here at Stirling Bridge, and it's great to see such a healthy turnout. It's nice to see that the rain has stayed off, and hopefully it will stay off long enough that we can get through our procedures tonight without anybody getting wet. On behalf of the Society of William Wallace, I'm going to ask Duncan Fenton to come up and say a few words just about William Wallace. Duncan.
1296, after the shameful atrocities committed by Edward I's army at Berwick, Scotland's castles began to be garrisons by English soldiers to keep the unruly Scots in check. But pockets of resistance soon grew. While Andrew de Moray had raised an army in the north, Wallace had done the same in the south. After he had murdered the Sheriff of Lanark, Wallace had gathered a growing band of followers, and as his reputation grew, his army grew with it. Go back on. The men who had flocked to him had decided that it was time to make a stand. They knew that the only way they could win their freedom was to snatch it out of the mailed fist of the English aggressor. Wallace and Murray met up early in September and made their way here to hold the bridge and to force the aggressors out of Scotland. After positioning his men on the Abbey Craig, he awaited the approach of the English army. When it came into sight, the vast array of soldiery must have been a terrifying sight. They had many seasoned veterans who had been involved in numerous battles on the continent. We can only imagine what those men felt as they watched a sea of men and horses wend its way slowly toward them across the bridge. A mixture of dread and excitement as they waited for the blast from Wallace's horn to end the interminable waiting, the signal for them to rush down upon the English. Wallace and Murray had decided to let enough of the enemy make the crossing that they thought the Scots could deal with, and then attack and cut off the bridge. And these tactics worked superbly. The English who had crossed the bridge were left with two options when they found they had no room to manoeuvre their horses or deploy their weapons. They could either stand and be cut to pieces or be pushed into the Forth to drown. Weighed down with heavy armour, they didn't stand a chance of surviving in the swirling waters. As the clash of steel and the shouts of men were gradually replaced by the screams of the wounded and dying and the wailing of their womenfolk, the Scots realised that they had won. The mighty English war machine had been defeated by Scots determined to repel these hostile invaders. Never before in the history of warfare had heavy cavalry been defeated by pikemen on foot. The Schiltrom had proved a success, each man relying on the man by his side to hold firm. Unfortunately, Murray died later of wounds sustained in battle, but had he left, I'm sure he would have gone on to many more victories. Wallace and Murray had given Scotland a fighting chance, and they took it in spectacular fashion. Wallace's appeal was the fact that he wouldn't ask his men to do anything that he wasn't prepared to do himself. That is why they respected him, and that is why they followed him. No one else has occupied the thoughts or fired the imagination of every true Scot in the way that Wallace has. His legacy is a belief that lives in here. That legacy is the concept of freedom. The ideal of freedom which Wallace fought all his adult life for and paid the ultimate price at the hands of the tyrannical King of England. His barbaric execution was staged to satisfy Edward's bloodlust. His attempt to sweep away the memory of Wallace from the Scottish people had exactly the opposite effect. 750 years on, and we are still here, Eddie. When you think of Wales, you think of lakes and rugby. When you think of Ireland, you think of shamrocks and leprechauns. England brings to mind bowler hats and Morris dancers. Switzerland, banking, Swiss Army knives. Belgium, chocolate. But think of Scotland, and it conjures up the sound of the pipes and the colour of the tartan. The image of Scotland is a PR man's dream. It practically advertises itself. There may be only 5 million or so Scots, but I am immensely proud to be one of them. Brave men stood here at the Battle of Stirling Bridge and showed the world what it means to be a Scot. Now it's our turn. Thank you.